packing his trusty whip for one last adventure. Here's a look at the Hasbro Indiana Jones Adventure Series Build an Artifact Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny Indiana Jones. The Man in the Hat is back. Again, this 6-inch scale Adventure Series figure is detailed to look like the Indiana Jones from Dial of Destiny. The figure includes premium detail and multiple points of articulation. Figure includes build an artifact piece so fans can build a portion of the Temple of Doom. Yeah, as we pack up stuff for one last adventure, it was certainly sad to see Indiana's state in the Dial of Destiny. I'm going to avoid any spoilers for anyone that hasn't had yet the chance to check out Dial of Destiny. But if you have, let me know what you thought of the movie down below in the comment section. Of course, leaving spoilers off if you can. Of course, when it comes to Dial of Destiny Indiana Jones, it also so happens to be the last figure that we were looking at from the new Adventure Series Build an Artifact, which so happened to have been from the Temple of Doom, which still makes me a little puzzled as to why they would have included older Indiana Jones and Helena Shaw other than just, let's just release plastic figures of them, because of course the new movie is out. Either way though, let's grab the tape measure and see how tall an older Indy stands. In this case, you're looking at Indiana Jones being about 6 inches in height, I would say, or the figure's about 15.5 centimeters tall. From a figure standpoint, we've had quite the journey. In fact, we've covered off most of the territory of Temple of Doom. There's a few figures, of course, that still have yet to be released in plastic form, but at least the ones that we did get part of this wave, like, for example, the hypnotized Indiana Jones, we got ourselves just a regular Indiana Jones, and then, of course, we did get ourselves Short Round. If you did want to display, of course, this version of Indiana Jones, then it probably would be best to get yourself also the Helena Shaw, reluctantly, I'm sure, twisting the arms of some of the collectors that really just did want to collect this line, being more centered around Temple of Doom. We did, though, get a few little additions that I would have preferred just to be not part of this wave and just be sold then separately. They could have easily just included accessories that belong to that movie, not necessarily belong to Temple of Doom. Speaking of Temple of Doom, though, this Indiana Jones, though not belonging to this movie, does at least come include with the serpent headdress that goes on top of the skull. Carefully, I bring in the skull. I only carefully do this because, of course, the Sankara stones that are not even lodged in there, they're just balancing inside the eye sockets. The nose isn't so bad, providing, of course, you just don't tilt the skull forward. And then on the bottom of actually the serpent, there's this little tiny peg. What the idea is in mind is that you're going to then take this. I may have to actually pick up the skull to do this. Like, the stones are okay, providing you don't bang it too hard. You're going to then, of course, take this part, and this is going to attach to the top of it. And this is basically what the skull looks like. One thing I actually did do also as well, probably just left behind from the review that I did of Short Round, I took this piece off. More so just to show you that it really doesn't even need it at all. I still don't understand why it would even be included inside the skull piece, when really, like, this chocolate-covered peanut, doesn't it look like a peanut? This, I think, could have easily just been molded, unless it had plans for other things. Like, it looks like it should be for something. What that something is, I have no ideas. While we're also keeping the complete skull in place, let's look at the rest of the accessories that come included with Indiana Jones. He comes, first of all, with a tiny, well, I guess not so tiny. He comes with a little lantern or light. For example, we'll just bring in the flashlight that came included with Shaw. They seem to be the same. Obviously, they probably would. While there is, again, no reflection on the front of it, the way they've shined the metal, plastic in this case, it does sort of reflect the light a little bit if you've got the light shining directly on it. But it seems to be like they are using the exact same light flashlights from one to the other. Remember back in the day when you were a kid and you had flashlights that took these giant batteries? What were they? What were those size batteries? Like D's or something? Probably even bigger than D's. And they just literally attached to the bottom of flashlights. How many people still have those? Anyways, this does fit into Indiana Jones's hand. The strange thing about this, though, is that he has, once again, like the hypnotized Indy, a triggering, firing hand. And yet, the figure doesn't come included with a pistol. Now, I could understand why a hypnotized Indiana Jones would not have included a gun, but why this one would have not included a gun is strange to me. It just makes no sense. Anyways, let's go ahead and take the flashlight. It just fits, like I said, in his hand. You're going to have to worry about you're not bending the thumb in the process. And yeah, Indiana Jones can go on an adventure with his flashlight in his hand. The other thing that he has, at least, is his trusty whip. The whip, in this case, you only get one version of it, and that's the one that's already wrapped up. Now, you could, for all intents and purposes, use a whip that came included with another Indiana Jones, although you'll see that the coloring is much darker on the rolled-up version that comes with this version of Indiana Jones, and much lighter than what the original Indiana Jones whips would have been. The neat thing, though, about this is that you don't have to worry about, pardon my stupid, you don't have to worry about a piece of plastic that wraps around it, plugs onto his belt. Still doesn't work for me. What you can do, at least with this Indiana Jones, is that on the side of his belt, he has a peg. It's very small, but you'll also see on the back of the whip, there's also a hole. And you just take the whip and you attach it onto the peg. And you know, honestly, it fits well. Not to the point, like, I could probably shake it around a little bit, jostling around Indiana Jones, what little left that he has inside his head. Oh, no. But yeah, you could attach technically the whip onto the side of his belt. So at least I like that. I just wish like the figure could have come included with another version of the whip, that one that he could actually have attached into his hands, but I'm sure as a standby I could probably just use one of these instead. The figure as a whole, I guess one other accessory he comes with included is his little pouch. The pouch is bigger though than the one we got before, and it also doesn't open up, so you can't store Sankara stones. Oh right, that's a different movie altogether. But this one actually can, like the one before, come off of his body. So if you just find like this is always just getting in the way, especially if you want to move around the figure's posability, which we'll probably do more in a moment, it's good at least that you can have this removed. It's molded fairly well, I would say, in like a dark military green plastic, and you've got, of course, the straps attaching both the sides. But for, I guess, you know what we'll do? I'll just leave this off for right now, because I'm obviously going to want to start moving around the figure's body. The one other thing also that the figure comes included with as well is a backpack. The backpack looks like it's got rope and a whole bunch of other things that he's going to be using to look inside the tombs. And of course, it does have straps on the back, so like the Shaw that we looked at before, you're just going to bring Indiana Jones's arms back. And like dressing a tiny little toddler. I always use that analogy. I'd love to see if you had a toddler this size. You could put them in your pocket. But anyways, this just fits over top of his arms, and then you just fit it around to the front. There we go. Now, Indiana Jones can carry around his pack with him. I think I may have ultimately dropped his whip. I'll have to go and retrieve that a little bit later. But yeah, I do like the idea that they included an actual backpack that is a separate piece, and it attaches like a normal backpack would. Let's just take that off for right now, just because I know we want to look at all the other things that are on the figure. So once again, just slide it down the arms, and we'll put the knapsack, we call it here in Canada, or a backpack, you can also call it as well. Getting a closer look at his head sculpt, for it being an older Indiana Jones, I think the head sculpt's actually quite good. The thing about his head, though, is that you can see, like, his head looks like it doesn't belong to this neck. And because of the way they've actually attached it via ball joint, unless you have it dead center like this, where it's sort of balanced on both sides, if you have it too far back, it looks like Indiana Jones has this big gap in between it. Well, he literally does, between the back of his neck and where his hair starts. Or if you bring it too far forward, then it looks like it just doesn't fit properly. You may want to, again, always have it kind of dead center. That doesn't look so bad there. But I feel like the head almost looks too big for his neck. And really, again, comparing it with other Indiana Jones figures, I've never really had the problem where his head looks like it's not right sized for the rest. Well, his head doesn't look the right size for his neck, just to show you guys, again, a comparison with him and hypnotized Indiana Jones. Of course, the rest of his outfit is pretty much more standard Indiana Jones. So, of course, he's got the jacket this time around. He's got his khaki shirt underneath. Funny enough, though, is that his sleeves are still, of course, molded brown. So if you thought, for example, I could just take the jacket off. You can't. Because, of course, his arms are dark brown underneath that. The sculpting of the jacket looks good. It sits a little baggy. But I mean, that's not a bad thing. That's not a negative point necessarily. It's just, I just noticed it sits a little loose on Indiana Jones's torso. And of course, he does have the darker brown slacks. They seem to be of the same slacks. Let's actually bring back in Indiana Jones. A different movie, but it looks like they're probably using the same molding for the legs. Maybe as well, yeah, shoes also as well. Except the thing about the shoes is the shoes are kind of more of a chocolate color for these ones, and a kind of more of a chestnut color brown for the original Indiana Jones. For the figure's articulation, once again, still the same as all the others that we looked at before, so the head is on a ball joint, rotates all the way around. Now, it's a little harder to actually make this out, because at the base of the neck, there's also a secondary ball joint. We can move the head forward and back that way, too. Just the only thing about it is be careful. You know, it's funny that all the fighting that I did to try to remove the heads on the other two Indiana Jones, this one is the easiest to remove. And it's like, what am I going to do with it? I guess you probably could use this body for like one of the younger Indiana Jones, but like, again, why would you? By the way, though, like, where is that other Indiana Jones? I think I actually just did I put him away? No, he's right over here. I guess if you wanted to, you could probably use this head sculpt for this jacket, but it's not really quite the jacket that he has. I guess it's close enough that if you wanted to use, all right, let's do this. We've started the process, started to talk about it at least. Let's pop the head off here, pop the head then on. Honestly, this is the first time I've realized this. I really wasn't planning at all to change the head, and I already knew before my disappointment. It looks to be the case, obviously, because they are using the Raiders body, I'm guessing, that they've also carried over the same wrong size ball joint. It's not going to fit now this head. Well, that scratches that idea then. So it looks like you're pretty much stuck in the idea that you're never going to be able to use, unless they give us another Indiana Jones, you're never going to be able to use like this head sculpt with a true Indiana Jones body. That sucks. I'm going to move that to the side. Back, though, to the figure's articulation. His arms come out. Once again, they're on peg and hinges, so you can rotate them also all the way around. The figure has a swivel in his bicep. Well, swivel, I guess, more so in his elbow, and there's also a hinge. I noticed, though, on my Indiana Jones, like, this elbow is not so bad, but this elbow here, strangely, is loose. Why is it loose? He hasn't been out of the package that long. The hands rotate also all the way around. The figure, like before, has a ball joint at the top of his... Well, it's actually even not at the top of his torso. It's actually down below here, like the original Indiana Jones. Let's just reach off and bringing him back in for comparison. Yeah, you know, again, looking at them, they are using the exact same body. So I really should have, while looking at these, realized that I was going to have the same problem with the ball joints being the wrong size to use then for Wave 2. Shame. So yeah, while the figure doesn't have, say, necessarily the upper torso ball joint that this Wave Indiana Jones had, he does have at least a ball joint at the base of the abdomen, so you can rotate it there. Legs do split out. They are ball joints on the insides of the legs. You can bring the legs forward, yes, bring them back. 3/4 of the way up the thigh, there's a swivel cut, so you can rotate that all the way around. A single hinge only in the knee, once again, but it allows at least the rotation of the lower leg. And like all the indies we looked at before, there's a hinge back and forth and an ankle rocker. While the skull is still there, let's bring in all the other Indiana Jones figures where we've covered off at least territory. There are obviously some Indiana Jones that I've still yet to pick up single card release or single boxed releases. But again, let's just bring in the ones where we've left off. Here's Indiana Jones from Raiders of the Lost Ark. Here's Indiana Jones from the Dial of Destiny, bookend on both the sides. And then at least of the ones we just recently had a look at, here's what he looks like with the Hypnotized Indy, and here's what he looks like with the Temple of Doom Indiana Jones. And for good measure, why not? We'll just bring in Short Round. You know, again, like, if you wanted Indiana Jones figures, how many times have I said his name over the course of this review? I mean, Hasbro's got you covered. Between these ones, both Wave 1 and Wave 2 of the Adventure series, we've been also building, of course, the Artifact. There it is in the background. And there's also some single releases of Indy I'd like to pick up at some point also as well. You know, still, I don't understand why we had to get ourselves Dial of Destiny Indiana Jones. He really didn't, again, belong at all in this wave. This figure, and along with that and Hell in a Shot, both of those, I think, should have been sold separately. Not changing the packaging. No, the packaging could have still stayed the same. It could have also said it well, Adventure Series. We're not going to be changing it from that standpoint. But I think then they could have included accessories specific to the Dial of Destiny. And then just leave like the rest of the characters, maybe not, of course, him, but leaving at least the rest of the three in the middle for their own Adventure Series, their own Build-A-Figure Artifact Series, where, of course, then you could build yourself, move it all over there, where we could build ourselves, of course, the skull. I don't think he really belonged in this wave. I'm glad we did get him. I mean, however, whatever way one would feel about the Dial of Destiny, whether it was good or bad, whether it was the worst of the Indiana Jones sequels, I'm glad at least we did get ourselves a figure from Hasbro, whether it belonged in this wave or not. Just before we actually jump over to final looks, and my little rant that I had, obviously, of including this particular Indiana Jones with what was mostly a majority Temple of Doom, put that to the side because we're going to talk more about that. But what I did, though, want to do is tack on to the end of this review before we jumped over to the rotisserie, because obviously one thing you guys would also want to see is how this artifact stacks up with the Ark that we looked at in the earlier or first wave of the Adventure series, now completely from two different movies. This one, obviously, for me at least, feels more like an artifact. It just looks fantastic. And, you know, obviously, if this is something that Indiana Jones is tracking down, then it makes the most sense of that being an artifact. I don't know if necessarily I would have said that the skull is an artifact. I guess it is in the sense that it holds the Sakara stones. But like to display the two, have them nicely on the shelf, I gotta say they do look good. And I don't think I have been disappointed at all by building the skull, where I was more obviously excited to build the arc because I like the look of the arc. I think the skull turned out really good. I just wish they could have done a little bit better job of attaching the Sakara stones with both the eyes and the nasal cavity of the skull. Alright, I bring back in the skull. Even though this Indiana Jones doesn't necessarily belong with the skull that he's been part of this wave for, over the course of, 5 videos, we have been building this thing after all. I thought it would be rightfully to be bringing it back at least for one last time, one last look, in final looks along with the older Indiana Jones. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to talk any more about why this guy had to be included, but I'm glad at least we did get ourselves, as mentioned in this review, an older Indiana Jones. However you feel about the Dial of Destiny, the figures at least needed to belong. They need to exist. They need to be made. And we finally do have 2 figures. Whether we are going to be getting any more characters from the Dial of Destiny other than Shaw and Indy, the time will certainly only tell. It all depends on whether these are successful in Hasbro's eyes. Whether those are Sakara stone eyes or not will dictate as to whether we're going to be getting any more future figures. Based at least from what we've seen online, there's still plenty of Adventure Series stuff that we are going to be getting. May not have always artifacts attached along with them, but if you are a fan of Indiana Jones, there's still lots coming your way. I just don't know if we're going to be getting any more Dial of Destiny stuff. Let's maybe hope not. I am looking forward, though, as a side note, some of the Last Crusade things that we are going to be getting in the pipeline. So, of course, when I eventually get my hands on those, when they eventually do get released, reviews of those ones will be also coming to this channel as well. In the meantime, if you guys enjoyed this video, I want to hit with a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and want to stick around, whether it's Indiana Jones or not, if you haven't already done so, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, and you're also turning on the bell notification. Of course, as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.